The fog clung to the English countryside like a shroud, as the grand Hargrove Manor loomed under the moonlit sky. It was November 1935, and the crimson corridor, its walls panelled in deep red velvet, echoed with the muffled footsteps of guests retiring after a lavish dinner. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the silence. Lady Evelyn Hargrove, the hostess, lay sprawled at the corridor's end, her evening gown soaked in blood from a single fatal stab wound. No weapon in sight, doors locked from within. How had the killer vanished? Enter Hercule Poirot, the little Belgian detective with the magnificent moustaches, summoned to unravel the impossible. What secrets hid behind the manor's gilded facade? Chapter 1. The Invitation to Death. The fog lay thick upon the English countryside, a living, breathing entity that curled around the ancient oaks and swallowed the moon in its grey embrace. It was the 15th of November, 1935, and the night air carried the sharp bite of impending winter. Hercule Poirot, the celebrated Belgian detective, sat in the back of a rattling Daimler taxi, his gloved hands folded neatly over the silver head of his cane. His moustaches, those magnificent, perfectly waxed works of art, twitched faintly as the vehicle lurched over a pothole. He disliked English roads. They were, in his estimation, as unpredictable as the English themselves. The telegram had arrived at his London flat only that morning, delivered by a breathless boy whose boots left muddy prints on Poirot's pristine carpet. Inspector Japp's handwriting, hurried and blotched with ink, had conveyed urgency. Poirot, stop! Murder at Hargrove Manor! Stop! Locked corridor! Impossible! Need your grey cells! Japp, impossible. The word had ignited a spark in Poirot's meticulous mind. He had cancelled his afternoon tea with Miss Lemon, packed a small valise containing 3 perfectly pressed handkerchiefs, his silver-backed brushes, and a tin of his favourite pomade, and boarded the first train south. Now, as the taxi creaked up the long, winding drive to Hargrove Manor, Poirot allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. Impossibility was merely truth wearing a mask. The manor emerged from the fog like a ship from the mist. 3 stories of weathered stone, ivy clawing at the walls, chimneys exhaling thin plumes of smoke into the night. Gas lamps flickered along the gravel path, their golden pools of light doing little to dispel the gloom. A butler, tall, gaunt with the funereal dignity of his profession, awaited at the entrance. His face was the colour of old parchment. "Monsieur Poirot," the butler intoned, bowing slightly. "Inspector Japp is expecting you. This way, if you please." Poirot stepped into the grand foyer. The air smelled of beeswax, wood smoke, and something metallic, blood perhaps. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, casting fractured rainbows across marble floors. Portraits of stern Hargrove ancestors glared down from the walls, their eyes following him as he removed his hat and coat. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, noting the opulence. "A house of secrets, non?" The butler led him through a labyrinth of corridors, past suits of armour, tapestries depicting medieval hunts, and a grandfather clock that chimed the quarter hour with mournful precision. Finally, they reached a heavy oak door guarded by a uniformed constable. Beyond it lay the crimson corridor. Inspector Japp burst through the moment the door opened, his bulldog face flushed with frustration. "Poirot! Thank heavens! It's a proper nightmare, this one." "Calme-toi, mon ami," Poirot said soothingly, adjusting his tie. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." Japp exhaled through his nose. "Right. Lady Evelyn Hargrove, widow of Sir Reginald Hargrove, the Diamond Fellow, hosted a small dinner party last night. 8 guests including family and associates. Dinner ended at 10. Guests retired to their rooms via this corridor. He gestured to the hallway behind him. Poirot stepped inside. The crimson corridor lived up to its name. Walls panelled in deep red velvet, absorbing sound and light alike. A thick Persian runner muffled footsteps. At the far end, a second oak door led to the guest wing. Between them, 30 feet of blood-soaked carpet. Lady Evelyn lay where she had fallen, her emerald silk gown spread like a dark flower. A single wound, precise between the 4th and 5th ribs, had ended her life. No weapon, no footprints in the blood save hers. Both doors had been locked from the inside, keys still in the locks. The windows were barred and painted shut. The scream had been heard at 10:47 p.m. by 3 separate witnesses. By 10:49, the doors were forced open. The corridor was empty save for the body. Poirot knelt, careful not to disturb the scene. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scanned every detail. The blood pool was symmetrical, suggesting she had fallen immediately. Her right hand clutched a torn scrap of crimson velvet. Her left held a single diamond earring, its mate missing. Her face, even in death, retained the haughty beauty that had graced society pages for decades. "Time of death?" Poirot asked. "Between 10:40 and 10:50, Japp replied. "Doctor's preliminary. No signs of struggle. One thrust straight to the heart." Poirot stood, brushing imaginary dust from his knees. And the guests? Locked in their rooms. Alibis for most. Servants confirm they were seen entering before the scream. But this corridor, Japp threw up his hands. "It's a blasted tomb!" Poirot paced slowly, his cane tapping rhythmically. He noted the scuff mark near the body, a faint drag as if something heavy had been pulled, a smear of mud on the baseboard, a single thread of gold caught in the carpet's weave, and there, beneath the chandelier, a faint circular indentation in the dust. "Tell me of the victim," Poirot said. Japp flipped open his notebook. "Lady Evelyn Hargrove, née Wentworth, married Sir Reginald in 1919. He died in 29, heart attack supposedly. Left her everything, the manor, the London house, a diamond mine in Kimberley, and a fortune in jewels. No children, rumours of indiscretions. She rewrote her will 3 months ago. No one knows the contents." Poirot's eyebrows arched. "Ah, the will, always the will." They moved to the drawing room, where the suspects awaited under the watchful eyes of constables. The fire had burned low, casting long shadows. 4 faces turned as Poirot entered, each a study in controlled panic. First, Colonel Reginald Thorne, late of the Indian Army. 62, ramrod straight despite a pronounced limp. His moustache rivaled Poirot's in magnificence, though less artfully groomed. His dress uniform was immaculate, medals gleaming. His eyes, however, were bloodshot. Next, Miss Clara Voss, Lady Evelyn's niece, 35, unmarried, with the sharp features of a governess and the wardrobe of a mourner. Her black dress was severe, her bun tighter than propriety allowed. Her hands twisted a lace handkerchief into knots. Then Dr. Julian Blackwood, the family physician. 48, handsome in a dissipated way, silver at the temples, a tremor in his left hand. His medical bag sat at his feet like a guilty secret. He avoided Poirot's gaze. Finally, Victor Lang, a German industrialist. 50, broad-shouldered with a dueling scar across one cheek. His suit was Savile Row, his accent clipped. He smoked a cigarette with aggressive nonchalance, ash falling onto the Aubusson rug. Poirot surveyed them like a conductor assessing an orchestra. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice silky, "we are all prisoners of circumstance tonight. A woman is dead, murdered in a corridor that admits no murderer. But Hercule Poirot does not believe in miracles, only in method. He began with the Colonel. You argued with Lady Hargrove at dinner, no? Thorne stiffened. A disagreement over a loan. She refused to advance me funds for a business venture. Hardly a motive for murder. And yet, Poirot said mildly, you were heard to say, you'll regret this, Evelyn. Heat of the moment, Thorne barked. I was in the library after dinner, reading. The butler can confirm. Poirot turned to Clara. And you, mademoiselle? Your aunt planned to disinherit you. Clara's lips thinned. Aunt Evelyn was capricious. She promised me the London house, then threatened to leave everything to the Cats Protection League. I retired to my room at 10:15. The maid saw me. Dr. Blackwood cleared his throat. Lady Hargrove suffered from nervous anxiety. I prescribed a mild sedative, laudanum. I checked on her at 10:30, found her well, and returned to my room. I heard the scream from bed. Lang exhaled smoke. I was in the billiard room until 10:40, playing solitaire. Then to my room. I saw nothing. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Curious. 4 people, 4 alibis, yet a woman dies alone in a locked corridor. He requested a tour of the guest wing. The bedrooms formed a semicircle around a central landing. Clara's room was nearest the corridor door, then Blackwood, then Lang. Thorne's was at the far end, overlooking the rose garden. Each door had a sturdy lock. Each key was accounted for. In Clara's room, Poirot noted a half-packed suitcase, Paris labels. Planning a trip, mademoiselle? I always keep a bag ready, she stammered, in case Aunt changed her mind. Blackwood's room smelled of carbolic and despair. A medical journal lay open to a page on cardiac arrest. A bottle of laudanum, half empty, sat on the nightstand. Lang's room was Spartan. A briefcase, a Luger pistol in a drawer, registered, he insisted, and a photograph of Lady Evelyn, younger, smiling in Monte Carlo. Thorne's room contained a locked dispatch box. War memorabilia, he grunted when Poirot inquired. Back in the corridor, Poirot examined the chandelier. Crystal pendants trembled in the draught. One was missing, replaced by a crude iron hook. He climbed a stepladder, brought by a nervous footman, and peered into the fixture. A faint residue of oil. And there, caught in the mechanism, a single crimson thread. Interesting, Poirot murmured. Japp scratched his head. What's it mean? It means, mon ami, that the corridor is not merely a hallway. It is a stage. As midnight approached, Poirot requested tea in the library. The room was panelled in dark oak, shelves groaning under leather-bound tomes. A fire crackled. He settled into a wing chair, sipping from a porcelain cup, when a shadow detached itself from the curtains. A woman, slight, veiled in black, stood trembling. Monsieur Poirot, she whispered, you must leave, before they kill you too. Poirot set down his cup. And who, madame, are they? She glanced over her shoulder. The corridor. It remembers. Blood calls to blood. Before he could question her, footsteps echoed in the hall. The woman fled through a side door. Poirot followed, but found only an empty servant's stair. Returning to the library, he discovered his tea cold and a single crimson petal floating on the surface. A rose petal, from the garden below Thorne's window. Outside the fog thickened. Somewhere in the manor, a clock struck 1. Poirot's grey cells whirred like a well-oiled machine. The scuff mark, the missing earring, the hook in the chandelier, the woman in black, and then from the crimson corridor, a sound, a faint rhythmic tapping, like a blind man seeking his way, or a killer returning to the scene. Poirot smiled grimly. The game, as they say, was afoot. Chapter 2. Shadows of Suspicion. The morning of the 16th dawned wan and reluctant, as though the sun itself hesitated to illuminate Hargrove Manor. Hercule Poirot stood at the tall mullioned window of the breakfast room, his small, neat figure silhouetted against the grey light. Frost feathered the glass. Beyond, the gardens lay under a shroud of mist, the rose-beds skeletal and black. He had not slept. The crimson petal in his cold tea, the tapping in the corridor, the veiled woman's warning, these fragments circled his mind like moths around a flame. Inspector Japp entered, rubbing red-rimmed eyes. "Morning, Poirot. Servants are in a state. Cook swears she saw a ghost in the scullery. White face, no eyes, load of rot, but it's got the maids hysterical." Poirot turned, his green eyes bright. "Ghosts, mon ami, are convenient. They explain what the living prefer not to see." He gestured to the long mahogany table, where silver chafing dishes steamed. "Come, we shall fortify ourselves with eggs and deduction." They ate in silence until the butler announced the suspects would assemble in the drawing-room at 10. Poirot dabbed his lips with a starched napkin. "Before we begin, I wish to examine the corridor once more, in daylight." The crimson corridor looked less sinister by morning, yet no less perplexing. Sunlight filtered through a high transom window, turning the red walls the colour of fresh arterial blood. Constables had cordoned the area. Lady Evelyn's body had been removed to the ice-house for autopsy. Only a chalk outline remained, arms flung wide like a supplicant. Poirot knelt, magnifying glass in hand. The scuff mark he had noted last night resolved into 2 parallel grooves, each 6 inches long, spaced precisely the width of a gentleman's shoe heel. They began at the chalk outline and ended abruptly beneath the chandelier. He measured with a tailor's tape, exactly 7 feet, 2 inches. "Curious," he murmured. "The lady was 5 feet 6 in her stockings, yet the drag begins at her shoulders and stops here." He tapped the carpet. "As though she were lifted, not pulled." Japp grunted. "Lifted by whom? No one was in the corridor." Poirot's gaze travelled upward. The chandelier hung 15 feet above the floor, its crystal pendants catching the light in fractured rainbows. The iron hook replacing the missing pendant glinted dully. He requested the stepladder again. Balancing with the grace of a tightrope walker, Poirot examined the fixture. The hook was new, bright steel, no rust. A faint groove encircled the chain where something had been tied and then removed. And there, caught in the brass filigree, a single strand of blonde hair, long, fine, the colour of ripe wheat. Lady Evelyn was dark, Japp said. "Precisely." Poirot descended, pocketing the hair in a small envelope. "We seek a blonde accomplice, or victim." At 10 o'clock, the drawing-room filled with the scent of wet wool and apprehension. The 4 suspects sat in a semicircle before the fireplace, where logs hissed and spat. Colonel Thorne nursed a brandy despite the hour. Clara Voss clutched a rosary. Dr. Blackwood chain-smoked Turkish cigarettes. Victor Lang stared into the flames as though answers might rise with the smoke. Poirot entered last, closing the double doors with a soft click. He did not sit. Instead, he paced, hands clasped behind his back, the very picture of a schoolmaster addressing errant pupils. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice crisp, "let us dispense with pretense. A woman lies dead, murdered with surgical precision in a corridor sealed tighter than Tutankhamun's tomb. Yet the impossible has occurred. Therefore, one of you, or more, has engineered a miracle of deception." He stopped before Colonel Thorne. "You, Colonel, borrowed £5,000 from Lady Evelyn last Michaelmas. She demanded repayment with interest you could not meet. At dinner, you were overheard to say, "I'd sooner see her in her grave than beg again." Thorne's face purpled. "A figure of speech! I was in the library until 11. The footman brought me whisky at 10:45. Poirot's eyes flicked to Clara. "And you, mademoiselle, discovered only yesterday that your aunt intended to leave the bulk of her estate to the Diamond Workers' Benevolent Fund. You have debts in Paris, couture mostly, a motive most feminine." Clara's knuckles widened on the rosary. "I loved my aunt. She was difficult, but family." "Love," Poirot said softly, "is often the sharpest blade." He turned to Dr. Blackwood. "You prescribed laudanum for Lady Evelyn's nerves. The bottle in your room is half empty, yet the pharmacy label shows it filled only 3 days ago. Did she require such quantities, or did you?" Blackwood crushed his cigarette. "She suffered insomnia. I checked her pulse at 10:30. She was alive." "Alive?" Poirot echoed, "but perhaps not alone." Finally, he faced Victor Lang. "Herr Lang, you arrived from Berlin last week with a proposal of marriage and a valuation of Lady Evelyn's diamond collection. Curiously, the safe in her boudoir was found open this morning, empty." Lang's scar twitched. "I was in the billiard room. Ask the butler. He refilled my glass at 10:38. Poirot smiled, a small cat-like smile. 4 alibis, each corroborated by a servant. Yet servants, like clocks, can be wound to strike at convenient hours. He produced the blonde hair in its envelope. "This was found in the chandelier. None of you possesses hair of this shade. Therefore, a 5th person was present in the corridor last night." The room stilled. Outside, wind rattled the windows like impatient fingers. Clara broke the silence. "The maid, Elsie, she's blonde. Perhaps she—" "Elsie," Japp interrupted, "was in the servants' hall with 6 witnesses from 10 cours until the scream." Poirot raised a hand. "Let us consider the mechanics. The corridor is 30 feet long. The scream occurred at 10:47. The doors were forced at 10:49. 2 minutes. In that time, the killer stabbed Lady Evelyn, removed the weapon, and vanished, leaving no trace. Impossible, you say, yet consider the chandelier." He gestured dramatically upward, though they were no longer in the corridor. 15 feet high, a hook where crystal once hung, a groove in the chain. Imagine a rope, thin, strong, perhaps fishing line, tied to the hook, passed through a pulley concealed in the ceiling rose, then down to the floor. The killer stands here. He marked a spot with his cane. Lady Evelyn enters. The rope is pulled taut. A weight, perhaps the missing diamond necklace, drops, releasing a spring mechanism. The knife, attached to a counterweight, swings down on a pendulum arc. 1 thrust. The rope is cut. The evidence retrieved through the transom window by an accomplice on the roof. Presto, the vanishing murderer. Thorne snorted. "Fantastical! Fantastical!" Poirot agreed. "But feasible. The scuff marks? The counterweight dragged across the carpet. The blonde hair. The accomplice, leaning through the transom to cut the rope." Blackwood laughed nervously. "You'd need an engineer, not a killer." "Or a doctor," Poirot said softly, "familiar with anatomy and pulleys from his university rowing days." Blackwood paled. At that moment, the butler entered, face ashen. "Sir, the ice house. Lady Evelyn's body. There's something you should see." They followed him through the kitchen gardens to the stone building, where the body lay on a trestle table. The local police surgeon had begun his examination. He lifted the sheet. Lady Evelyn's right hand, rigid in death, clutched not just the scrap of velvet, but a small brass key, tied with crimson thread. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The key to the puzzle, perhaps, or to another lock entirely. As they returned to the manor, snow began to fall. fat, silent flakes that covered footprints and secrets alike. In the crimson corridor, the chandelier swayed gently, though no wind stirred the air, and from the transom window above, a single blonde hair drifted down, landing soundlessly on the chalk outline where Lady Evelyn had died. Chapter 3. The Hidden Diary. Snow had begun to fall in earnest by the time the party re-entered the manor, each flake a silent accusation against the crimson corridor. Hercule Poirot paused beneath the chandelier, watching the blonde hair settle on the chalk outline like a moth on a corpse. He plucked it up with tweezers, sealed it beside its twin in a second envelope, and tucked both into the breast pocket of his waistcoat, close to the heart, where secrets were safest. Inspector Japp stamped snow from his boots. That key, brass, old-fashioned, doesn't match any door in the house. Locksmith's coming from Guildford, but the roads are clogging. Poirot's moustache twitched. Patience, mon ami. Locks are patient. They wait for the right key or the right mind. He turned to the butler. Monsieur, Lady Evelyn's boudoir, now! The boudoir lay at the far end of the guest wing, a confection of pale gold and ivory. Snow light filtered through lace curtains, giving the room the quality of a sepia photograph. A ormolu clock ticked with nervous insistence. The safe, its door yawning open, stood in an alcove behind a portrait of Sir Reginald Hargrove in safari kit, rifle raised, eyes cold. Poirot knelt before the safe. Empty, as Lang had claimed, save for a faint scent of violets and a single diamond chip glittering in the corner like a tear. He brushed it into a third envelope. Her jewels, Japp muttered, worth a king's ransom. Whoever opened this knew the combination. Or, Poirot said, rising, knew where the combination was written. He moved to the rosewood escritoire. Drawers glided open at his touch. Bills, theatre programmes, a half-finished letter to a Paris modiste. Beneath a blotter, a leather-bound diary, its lock snapped by forcible entry. Poirot carried it to the window. The pages crackled like dry leaves. Lady Evelyn's handwriting, elegant, impatient, leapt across the vellum. 12th of October. Thorn came begging again, told him the well is dry. His eyes, wolfish, must change the will before he turns desperate. 28. October. Clara's latest bill from Worth, 420 for a single gown. She thinks diamonds grow on trees, no more. The mine yields less each year. 3rd of November, Julian visited, prescribed laudanum, but his hands shook, confessed the old sin, 1919, the clinic in Zurich, says he has a daughter, impossible, yet the dates, I must know. 10th of November, Victor arrived with roses and lies, showed me papers, Kimberley production down 40%, wants to merge interests. Translation, steal mine. Safe combination changed tonight. New hiding place, the crimson corridor remembers. Poirot closed the diary with a soft snap. Ah, the corridor remembers. Our Lady was poet as well as pragmatist. Japp whistled. Blackwood has a daughter. That's a motive with teeth. Teeth, Poirot agreed, and claws, but let us not pounce prematurely. He slipped the diary into his pocket. First, the key. They searched the boudoir with methodical zeal. Beneath a cushion on the chaise longue, Poirot found a small brass key, identical to the one clutched in Lady Evelyn's dead hand, save for a tiny notch filed into the bow. 2 keys, Japp said. One in her hand, one hidden. Why? Because, Poirot replied, one opens a door, the other opens a secret. He led the way back to the crimson corridor. The snow light through the transom painted the walls the colour of watered blood. Poirot knelt again, this time at the wainscoting, opposite the chalk outline. His fingers traced the carved acanthus leaves until, click, A panel swung inward on concealed hinges. A narrow compartment, no larger than a bread box, lay behind. Empty, but the velvet lining bore the faint imprint of a rectangular object and a single drop of dried blood. "The hiding place," Poirot murmured. "She came here after dinner to retrieve, what? The new will? Proof of Blackwood's confession?" He inserted the notched key into a tiny lock within the compartment. It turned smoothly. A second, deeper click sounded from the floor. A section of the parquet lifted like a trapdoor, revealing stone steps descending into darkness. A draught of cold, damp air rose, carrying the scent of earth and decay. "A priest's hole," Japp breathed. "From the Reformation. Half the old houses have them." Poirot produced a pocket torch. The beam revealed a spiral stair of worn granite, walls slick with condensation. At the bottom, a low tunnel stretched away, brick-vaulted, barely 5 feet high. Cobwebs hung like funeral lace. "Mon Dieu," Poirot said softly, "the corridor has a throat." They descended. The tunnel ran beneath the guest wing, emerging, after 20 yards, into the wine cellar. A second door, iron-bound, stood ajar. Beyond it, the main cellar, racks of dusty bottles glinting like soldiers at attention. Japp examined the door. No lock on this side. Someone could enter from the cellar, climb the stairs, emerge in the corridor, commit the crime, and retreat the same way. The panel closes behind them, self-latching. Poirot nodded. And the drag marks? The counterweight was unnecessary. The killer simply carried the weapon down the stairs. But the blonde hair in the chandelier? How? They retraced their steps. Halfway up the tunnel, Poirot's torch caught a glint. A thin steel wire, no thicker than fishing line, was stapled along the wall, disappearing into a crack near the trapdoor. It led upward, through the ceiling rose, and when Poirot shone the light through the transom, directly to the chandelier hook. "The accomplice," Poirot said. "One in the tunnel, one on the roof. The wire triggers a spring. The knife drops. The rooftop accomplice cuts the line, retrieves the blade through the transom. The tunnel killer escapes below. 2 minutes, ample." Japp swore under his breath. "But who?" Before Poirot could answer, a scream echoed from the manor above, high, terrified. They raced up the stairs, through the panel, into the corridor. Clara Voss stood at the far end, near the guest wing door, one hand pressed to her mouth. In the other she held a blood-stained handkerchief. "It was here," she gasped as they reached her. "On the floor. I came to fetch my aunt's prayer book. She kept it in the corridor table. This was beside it." Poirot took the handkerchief. Monogrammed E.H. The linen was stiff with dried blood, human by the smell. But something else. A faint trace of violet scent. "Lady Evelyn's," Japp confirmed. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "You found it now? After the constables searched twice?" Clara's gaze flickered. I was upset earlier. I didn't see it." Poirot sniffed the handkerchief delicately. Violet water and something acrid. Chloroform, perhaps. Curious. He turned to the corridor table, a spindly affair of rosewood and ormolu. The prayer book lay open to the 23rd Psalm. Beneath it, a single page torn from the diary. The entry about Blackwood's confession. The edges were ragged, as though ripped in haste. "Planted," Poirot said quietly. "Like the medal, the cufflink. Someone wishes us to look at Dr. Blackwood, and at you, mademoiselle." Clara's face crumpled. "I swear I—" A crash from the guest wing cut her off. They ran to find Dr. Blackwood's door ajar. Inside, the room was chaos. Drawers upended, the laudanum bottle shattered. Blackwood himself lay on the rug, a bruise blooming on his temple. Ambushed, he groaned as Poirot helped him up. "Came in, someone behind the door, hit me, took the letter." "What letter?" Japp demanded. Blackwood's eyes darted. "From Evelyn, years ago, about the child." Poirot's voice was silk over steel. "The child who may be among us?" Blackwood sagged. "Clara, she might be mine. Evelyn never said. But the dates—" Clara, in the doorway, went white as the snow outside. From the corridor, the chandelier gave a sudden eerie creak, though no wind stirred. The blonde hair was gone. In its place, a single crimson rose petal clung to the hook, wet with melting snow. Poirot looked up, his face grim. "The game escalates. Someone plays with fire and blood." Outside, the snow fell thicker, erasing footprints, sealing the manor in white silence. But in the crimson corridor, the shadows lengthened, and the hidden diary's final entry burned in Poirot's mind. 14th of November. Tonight I confront them all. The corridor will bear witness. If I die, let the crimson remember. Chapter 4. Alibis unravel. The snow had sealed Hargrove Manor like a letter in an envelope. By noon the drive was impassable. Telephone wires sagged under ice. Even the rooks had abandoned the elms. Hercule Poirot stood in the crimson corridor, hands clasped behind his back, watching constables string cotton thread from the chandelier hook to the transom window, then down through the priest's hole panel into the tunnel. The wire, thin surgical steel, glinted like a spider's strand. A Scotland Yard technician knelt beside it, measuring tension with a spring scale. 4 pounds, 2 ounces, the man announced. Enough to release a spring-loaded blade. Clever, deadly. Poirot nodded. Clever, yes, but not infallible. The hand that tied this wire left a fingerprint in the beeswax on the hook. He indicated a faint whirl, visible under a bleak light. "We shall dust. We shall compare." Inspector Japp wiped frost from his moustache. "Roads are closed till tomorrow. No forensic van. We're on our own." "Bon," Poirot said. "Isolation sharpens the mind. Let us sharpen the alibis." They began in the conservatory, where palms drooped like weary sentinels, and the air smelled of damp earth and oranges. Snowlight filtered through the glass roof, turning the marble floor the colour of skimmed milk. The 4 suspects sat on wicker chairs arranged in a square. Thorne rigid, Clara pale, Blackwood nursing his bruised temple, Lang smoking with aggressive calm. A gramophone in the corner played a scratchy recording of Debussy's Clair de Lune, the needle hissing like a snake. Poirot silenced the music with a flick of his cane. "Mesdames et messieurs, the net tightens. Last night, someone struck Dr. Blackwood and stole a letter. Someone planted a blood-stained handkerchief. Someone climbed the roof in a blizzard to retrieve a knife. Let us dismantle your alibis, one by one, as one dismantles a watch." He began with the Victor Lang. "You claim the billiard room until 10:40. The butler refilled your glass at 10:38, yet the decanter was found empty this morning. How many glasses, Herr Lang?" Lang shrugged. 3, 4. I was distracted." "Distracted," Poirot echoed. "By the sound of a woman screaming, perhaps. The billiard-room window overlooks the rose garden. From there, one could lower a rope to the transom." He produced a coil of silk cord from his pocket, identical to that found in Lang's briefcase. "Purchased in Berlin, no? For mountain climbing." Lang's scar twitched. "Coincidence." "Coincidence," Poirot said, "is the refuge of the guilty." He turned to Colonel Thorne. "You were in the library. The footman brought whiskey at 10:45, yet the glass on your desk contained only water, and your war medal, found beside the body, was polished this morning. Why clean blood that was never there?" Thorne's jaw worked. I dropped it earlier, polished it out of habit." Habit, Poirot said softly. Or rehearsal? Clara Voss spoke, voice trembling. I was in my room. The maid saw me at 10:15. I read until the scream. Poirot produced the torn diary page. This was under your prayer book. The edges matched the diary exactly. You tore it out, planted the handkerchief, then discovered both. Why? Clara's eyes filled. I didn't. Someone is framing me. Or, Poirot said, you frame yourself to appear innocent. A classic misdirection. Dr. Blackwood lit another cigarette with shaking fingers. I was in my room after checking Evelyn at 10:30. Someone knocked me out at midnight. Poirot's gaze was surgical. You checked her pulse, you say. Yet the laudanum bottle in your room, half empty, contained not laudanum but chloroform. Enough to render a woman unconscious before the blade fell. You needed her still for the pendulum strike. Blackwood crushed the cigarette. Absurd. I'm a doctor, not a murderer. Doctors, Poirot said, know where the heart lies. He moved to the centre of the square. Now the roof. Snow began at 10:20. Footprints would show, yet the constable on the west wing saw none. Therefore, the accomplice used the chimney stack for cover, or entered from inside. Japp produced a ladder. They climbed to the attic, then through a hatch to the slate roof. Snow had drifted waist-deep in places, but a narrow path, recently swept, led from the guest wing chimney to the transom above the crimson corridor. A grappling hook, padded with felt, lay half buried in a drift. Inside job, Japp muttered. Someone knew the manor's bones. Back in the conservatory, Poirot laid the hook on the table like a trophy. Silk cord, grappling iron, chloroform, a spring-loaded blade. This was no crime of passion. This was engineering. Thorne laughed harshly. You'll need more than gadgets, Poirot. Motive, opportunity. Opportunity, Poirot said, was the dinner party itself. 8 guests, 4 suspects, 3 servants in the corridor at various times. The maid Elsie, blonde, remember, passed through at 10:25 with hot water bottles. She could have tied the wire. Japp shook his head. Elsie was with the cook from 10:30 onward. 6 witnesses. Then the accomplice was among the 8. Poirot's eyes swept the room, or the 9th. He produced the brass key from Lady Evelyn's hand. This opens nothing in the house, but the notched key from the boudoir. He inserted it into a small lacquered box found in the priest's hole. Inside, a single sheet of vellum, the new will. Lady Evelyn had left everything to a trust for illegitimate children of diamond miners. No one in the room benefited. Clara gasped. She disinherited us all. Except, Poirot said, one person. The trust's administrator, Dr. Julian Blackwood. Blackwood surged to his feet. Lies! I knew nothing! The conservatory door burst open. The butler, face grey, held a silver salver. On it lay a diamond earring, the mate to the one in Lady Evelyn's hand, smeared with fresh blood. Found in the rose garden, he stammered, under the colonel's window. Thorne stared. Poirot lifted the earring. The post was bent, as though torn from an ear in struggle. Fresh blood, not Lady Evelyn's, type O. Hers was AB. Whose blood is this? A silence fell, broken only by the gramophone needle scratching the run-out groove. Poirot's voice cut through. The killer returned to the scene, not for the knife, for the earring. Why? Because it bears an engraving inside the setting. Initials, CV. Clara Voss touched her bare earlobe, eyes wide. My earrings. Aunt gave them to me last Christmas. I lost one weeks ago, or had it stolen, Poirot finished, to plant at the scene. But the killer needed the mate to complete the frame. They searched your room, Clara, while you slept, found it, returned to the garden to bury it. Only the snow betrayed them. He turned to Blackwood. "You knew the will. You needed Clara blamed. Illegitimate. Daughter. Greedy niece. The earring links her to the body, but you overlooked the blood type." Blackwood lunged for the door. Japp tackled him. The doctor fought like a cornered animal, but the constables pinned him. As they dragged him away, Blackwood spat. "She deserved it. She would have exposed me, ruined me." Poirot watched, expression unreadable. Exposure is the killer's true fear. In the corridor, the cotton thread had been removed. The chandelier hung still, innocent, but on the floor, beneath the chalk outline, a single drop of fresh blood had appeared. Bright, arterial, impossible. Poirot knelt. The drop was warm. From the priest's hole, a faint sound, scratching like claws on stone. The net had tightened, but the trap was not yet sprung. Chapter 5. The Midnight Pursuit. The drop of blood on the chalk outline was still spreading when Hercule Poirot pressed a gloved fingertip to it. Warm, fresh, impossible. Lady Evelyn had been dead for 14 hours. The corridor had been guarded since dawn. Yet the crimson bead trembled, then soaked into the Persian wool like a secret whispered to the floor. Inspector Japp's face had gone the colour of wet ash. "Poirot, that's new blood. Someone's bleeding in here, now." From the priest's hole came the scratching again, slow, deliberate, like fingernails on coffin wood. Poirot's torchbeam stabbed downward. The spiral stair was empty, but a smear of blood, hand-shaped, marked the wall at shoulder height. It glistened. "Mon Dieu," Poirot breathed. "The killer returns to the wound." Japp drew his Webley. "Stay behind me." "Non, mon ami." The little grey cells lead, the revolver follows. Poirot descended first, cane tapping each step. The tunnel air was colder now, thick with the iron reek of blood and the sweeter rot of wine gone to vinegar. Halfway down, the torch caught a footprint in the dust. Bare, narrow, the toes splayed as though the owner had been running. At the bottom, the iron-bound door to the wine cellar stood ajar. Beyond, racks of bottles marched into darkness like soldiers. A single bulb swung from a cord, painting the scene in sickly yellow. On the flagged floor lay a trail of blood, drops at first, then a steady trickle, leading between the racks to the far wall. Poirot followed, silent as a cat. The trail ended at a brick pillar. Fresh mortar had been scraped away. A loose brick lay on the floor. Behind it, a cavity. Inside, a small leather pouch soaked through. Poirot opened it with tweezers. Diamonds, raw, uncut, the size of pigeon eggs, glittered like frozen tears. And threaded among them, a lock of blonde hair, tied with crimson silk. "Elsie the maid," Japp muttered. "But she's accounted for." "Non," Poirot said. "Someone wishes us to think so." He sniffed the pouch. "Chloroform again. The same bouquet as the handkerchief." A groan echoed from the racks. They spun. Colonel Thorne staggered out, left hand clamped to his right forearm. Blood seeped between his fingers, dark against the khaki of his sleeve. "Thorne!" Japp barked. "What the devil?" "Ambushed," the colonel rasped. "Came down for brandy. Someone behind the pillar. Knife. Got my arm." He swayed. "Saw a woman, blonde, running toward the old icehouse tunnel." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "You were stabbed with the same blade that killed Lady Evelyn?" Thorne nodded. "Felt it. Same balance. Damnably sharp." Japp tore a strip from his own scarf, binding the wound. "We need the doctor. Blackwood is in the library under guard," Poirot said. "And Clara, with the maids, hysterical." Poirot examined Thorne's injury. A clean slash, 3 inches, through the muscle. Not fatal, a warning or a signature. They helped Thorne to a chair. Poirot's mind raced. The diamonds, stolen from the Kimberley mine, no doubt. The blonde hair, planted again. The knife, returned to wound another. The killer was staging a performance, each act more daring. "Jap," Poirot said, "take the colonel upstairs, lock every door, then bring me the household register, every servant, every guest, every tradesman who has entered this house in the last month." As Jap half carried Thorn away, Poirot remained in the cellar. He retraced the blood trail. It looped, confusingly, ending at a second brick pillar. This one concealed a rusted iron ring. He pulled. A section of wall pivoted, revealing a narrow passage older than the priest's hole, Roman brick, damp with centuries. Torch in hand, Poirot entered. The passage slanted downward, the air growing colder, the scent of blood replaced by ice. 20 yards on, it opened into the old ice house, a cavernous dome where blocks of winter ice had once been stored for summer. Moonlight filtered through a vent high above, silvering the frost. In the centre stood a figure, small, hooded blonde hair escaping the cloak. She knelt over something on the ice, a body. Poirot approached, cane ready. "Mademoiselle, or whoever you are, turn slowly." The figure froze. Then, with a sob, she stood. The hood fell back. Elsie the maid, face streaked with tears, apron soaked in blood. "Mr. Poirot," she whispered, "I didn't kill her, I swear. But he made me." "Who?" Poirot demanded. Before she could answer, a shadow detached from the ice blocks. Victor Lang, coat unbuttoned, Luger in hand. "Drop the cane, little man." Poirot obeyed. The pistol's muzzle gleamed. "Herr Lang, the diamonds, I presume?" Lang's scar twisted. "Evelyn discovered the smuggling. I offered marriage to silence her." She laughed, said she'd expose me to the authorities. The will was the final insult, everything to charity. "And the blonde hair? Elsie's. I paid her to plant clues. She was to meet me here with the pouch, but someone else got here first." He gestured to the body on the... Poirot stepped closer. It was Dr. Blackwood, throat cut ear to ear, eyes staring at the moon. The murder weapon, a long, thin stiletto, lay beside him, blood frozen in crimson icicles. "Blackwood was your accomplice?" Poirot asked. "Partner," Lang corrected. "He forged the medical certificates for the diamonds, said they were surgical tools." When Evelyn confronted him about the child, Clara, he panicked, stabbed her in the corridor. "I rigged the chandelier to make it look impossible." Elsie sobbed. "He said he'd kill my mother if I didn't help." Poirot's voice was calm. "And the fresh blood upstairs?" "Blackwood," Lang said. "I followed him to the cellar. He was going to run with the diamonds. I couldn't allow it." Poirot's eyes flicked to the stiletto. "The same blade? Blackwood's. He kept it in his bag. Poetic, yeah?" Footsteps echoed behind them. Jap, revolver drawn, constables at his heels. "Lang, drop it!" Lang swung the Luger toward Poirot. "One more step!" Poirot moved faster than seemed possible for a man of his stature. His cane whipped up, striking Lang's wrist. The pistol flew, skittering across the ice. Jap tackled him. The constables secured Elsie gently. As Lang was cuffed, he laughed, harsh, broken. "You think it ends with me? The corridor remembers everything." Back in the manor, dawn was breaking, pale gold through the snow. Poirot gathered the household in the drawing room. Clara sat white-faced. Thorn's arm was bandaged. Blackwood's body lay in the ice house under guard. Poirot addressed them. "The case is closed. Victor Lang killed Dr. Blackwood to silence him. Blackwood killed Lady Evelyn. Motive, exposure of his illegitimate daughter Clara, and his part in the diamond smuggling. Lang orchestrated the impossible murder using the chandelier and priest's hole. Elsie was coerced. Clara wept. "My father's a murderer." Thorne poured brandy with his good hand. "And the will? Valid," Poirot said. "The trust benefits thousands. Justice in its way." Japp clapped cuffs on Lang. "You'll hang for this." Lang's eyes met Poirot's. "The Crimson Corridor will claim another. It always does." As they led him away, Poirot noticed something on the drawing-room rug. A single drop of blood. Fresh. Warm. It had not been there moments before. He knelt. The drop quivered, then sank into the wool. From the corridor, the chandelier gave one final creak, though the house was still. Poirot straightened, moustache bristling. "Non, mon ami," he murmured to the empty air. "The corridor remembers, but Hercule Poirot forgets nothing." Outside, the snow had stopped. The manor stood silent, secrets buried beneath white. But in the crimson corridor, the chalk outline seemed to pulse, like a heart that refused to die. Chapter 6. Secrets in Scarlet. The snow had ceased by late afternoon, leaving Hargrove Manor encased in a silence so complete it rang like crystal. Hercule Poirot stood alone in the crimson corridor. The chalk outline now washed away by the maids, yet the carpet bore a darker stain, memory in wool. The chandelier hung motionless, its missing pendant replaced by a temporary bulb that cast a cold, surgical light. The priest's whole panel stood open like a mouth that had confessed too much. Victor Lang was in the village lockup, shouting in German about conspiracies. Dr. Blackwood's body lay in the ice house, throat frozen in a rictus of surprise. Elsie the maid had been taken to the servants' hall, dosed with brandy and guarded by a sympathetic constable. Clara Voss had locked herself in her room, refusing food. Colonel Thorne prowled the library with a bottle and a bandage. Yet the drop of blood on the drawing-room rug, warm, fresh, impossible, gnawed at Poirot's grey cells, like a rat in the wainscoting. Inspector Japp entered, snow melting from his boots. "Lang's confessed everything, Poirot. Blackwood stabbed Evelyn at 10:45 using the priest's hole. Lang triggered the chandelier drop to confuse timing. They planned to frame Clara with the earrings and diary page. The diamonds were to fund their escape to Argentina. Case closed." Poirot twirled his moustache. "Closed, mon ami. A confession is merely the final act. The play began long before the curtain rose." He led Japp to the conservatory, where the wicker chairs still bore the imprint of tense bodies. On the table lay the murder weapon, the stiletto, now wrapped in oilcloth. Poirot unwrapped it carefully. The blade was thin, triangular surgical steel, a faint inscription near the hilt. J. Blackwood, Zurich, 1919. "Blackwood's abortion scalpel," Poirot said, "from the clinic where he met Lady Evelyn. She was a nurse then, 19, pregnant, abandoned by a married officer. Blackwood performed the procedure. The child lived. Clara," Japp whistled. "So Clara is the motive and the heir. No. The will leaves nothing to blood, only to the trust." Poirot produced the vellum sheet, but observe the margin. A codicil in Evelyn's hand, dated yesterday. "Should harm befall me, the diamonds in the ice house revert to CV, my niece, my daughter." Japp stared. She knew she'd be killed? She suspected. The confrontation at dinner was her trap. She wore the earrings to mark Clara as heir. The key in her hand opened the codicil's hiding place. Then why the elaborate murder? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Because someone else knew of the codicil and needed Clara blamed before it surfaced. He moved to the gramophone, lifted the needle, and set it to a blank groove. A soft hiss filled the room. Listen, the house breathes. From the corridor came a sound, faint, rhythmic, scratching, the same as in the priest's hole. Japp drew his revolver. The tunnel? No, higher. Poirot pointed to the ceiling rose above the yeb. Chandelier. A circular plaster medallion painted crimson with a hairline crack running through the centre. They fetched the stepladder. Poirot climbed, pressed the crack. The medallion swung inward on a hinge, revealing a narrow shaft, brick-lined, no wider than a chimney. A rope ladder dangled into darkness. Another passage, Japp breathed. Where does it lead? Up, Poirot said, to the attic and beyond. They climbed. The shaft was tight, the air thick with dust and the scent of roses, wilted, funereal. 20 feet up, it opened into the attic, a cavern of beams and shadows, trunks shrouded in cobwebs. Moonlight slanted through a dormer window, silvering a trail of fresh blood drops across the planks. The trail led to a door, small, painted crimson, padlocked. Poirot produced the brass key from Evelyn's hand. It turned with a soft click. Beyond lay a chamber no larger than a confessional. Crimson velvet walls, a single chair, a rosewood table. On the table, a phonograph cylinder, a reel of fishing line, a spring-loaded dagger mechanism, disassembled, gleaming, and a diary, newer than Evelyn's, bound in red leather. Poirot opened it. The handwriting was Clara's. 10th of November. Aunt knows about father, she'll tell. I can't let her ruin us. The corridor will hide everything. 14th of November. Dr. B will do the deed. Lang provides the diamonds. I'll trigger the blade from the attic. No one suspects the niece. 15th of November. It worked. But Aunt clutched the key. The codicil. She changed it. I must find it before they do. The final entry, scrawled in haste. Tonight they're coming for me. The crimson remembers. If I die, burn this. Poirot closed the diary. Clara, the architect, Blackwood the blade, Lang the bait, Elsie the distraction, Thorn. He paused. Thorn the witness. Japp stared. But Lang confessed. Lang confessed to what he believed. Clara let him take the fall. She stabbed Blackwood in the ice house to silence him. The blood in the drawing room, her own, from a cut finger to lure us back. Footsteps creaked below. Clara's voice muffled. Mr. Poirot, the constable says you wanted me. Poirot signalled Japp to hide behind a trunk. He stepped into the chamber, leaving the door ajar. Clara entered, eyes red-rimmed, a shawl about her shoulders. You found my hiding place. Oui, mademoiselle, your stage. Poirot gestured to the mechanism. The chandelier drop was your design. You studied engineering at Girton, no? Before your aunt brought you home. Clara's face hardened. She stole my life, made me a companion, then threatened to expose father, ruin us both. The diamonds were to be my freedom. And the codicil. She added it at the last moment. I saw her hide the key. I needed it to destroy the will. Clara's hand slipped into her shawl. A derringer glinted. Poirot raised his cane. You cut your finger to plant the blood. You stabbed Thorn to create chaos. But you overlooked the phonograph cylinder. He lifted it. Your voice, recorded as you rehearsed the scream. The maid heard two voices, Evelyn's and yours, played from the attic to confuse timing. Clara's arm trembled. No one will believe. Japp stepped out, revolver levelled. Drop it, Miss Voss. She fired. The bullet splintered the table. Poirot's cane struck her wrist. The derringer clattered away. Japp cuffed her as she fought like a wildcat. You can't prove, she began. Poirot held up the diary. Your confession, mademoiselle, in your own hand. As they led her down the rope ladder, Clara laughed. High, broken. The corridor remembers. It will claim you all. In the crimson corridor, the chandelier gave one final shiver. a single crimson petal drifted down, landing on the spot where Lady Evelyn had died. Poirot caught it. "No, mademoiselle, the corridor forgets nothing, but Hercule Poirot remembers everything." Outside, the snow began to melt. The manor's secrets, like ice, dripped away into the earth. Chapter 7. The deduction begins. The drawing-room fire had burned low, its embers pulsing like a dying heart. Snowmelt dripped from the eaves in steady, mournful beats. Hercule Poirot stood at the mantel, hands clasped behind his back, the crimson petal from the corridor resting on the marble beside a silver coffee pot. The household, suspects, servants, constables, sat in a semicircle of gilt chairs, faces lit by the flicker of a single lamp. Clara Voss, wrists cuffed, sat between two officers, her black dress torn at the shoulder, eyes blazing defiance. Victor Lang, brought back from the village lockup, slumped in a corner, scar-livid against pale skin. Colonel Thorne nursed his bandaged arm. The maids hovered at the door, aprons clutched like shields. Inspector Japp closed the double doors with a soft thud. "Right, Poirot, the stage is yours." Poirot inclined his head. "Merci, mon ami. We assemble, as in the theatre, for the denouement. But first, let us rewind the reel." He lifted the red leather diary, Clara's, turning it so all could see. Here, in Mademoiselle's hand, is the blueprint of murder. Yet blueprints are drawn long before the first brick is laid. Let us begin with the foundation. He paced, cane-tapping. Lady Evelyn Hargrove, wealthy, ruthless, childless by choice after a youthful tragedy. In 1919, Zurich Clinic. Dr. Julian Blackwood performs an illegal abortion. The child, Clara, survives, is adopted by Evelyn's sister. Years later, Evelyn brings Clara to the manor as companion, never revealing the truth. Clara spat. "She used me." "Used?" Poirot echoed. "Or protected. She paid your debts, your education. But protection has a price. Silence. When Evelyn discovered Blackwood's diamond smuggling with Herr Lang, she threatened exposure. The codicil to her will, hidden in the ice house, was her insurance. If she died, Clara inherited the stones." Lang stirred. "I told you Blackwood stabbed her. I only—" "No," Poirot cut in. "You believed your confession, but belief is not truth. Observe." He produced the stiletto, unwrapping it with reverence. This blade killed 3. Lady Evelyn, Dr. Blackwood, and nearly Colonel Thorne. Yet the hand that held it changed. "Step by step," Poirot said, "dinner 10 p.m. Evelyn announces she will expose the smuggling. Blackwood, panicked, slips chloroform into her coffee. She retires drowsy. Clara, in the attic, lowers the fishing line through the ceiling rose. Blackwood enters via the priest's hole, positions Evelyn beneath the chandelier. At 10:47, Clara triggers the spring. The blade drops. Blackwood catches it, stabs once to ensure death, then retreats below. Lang, on the roof, cuts the line, retrieves the blade through the transom. 2 minutes, perfect, Thorne growled. But Blackwood's throat was cut by Clara, Poirot finished, in the ice house. She lured him there with the diamonds, promised escape. When he revealed the codicil, she silenced him. The blood in the drawing room. She pricked her finger to create mystery, to keep us chasing shadows. Clara laughed, sharp, brittle. Prove it. Poirot smiled. The proof is in the petal. He held up the crimson rose petal. From the conservatory hothouse. You picked it at 11:30 p.m. after killing Blackwood to plant in the chandelier, a signature. But the petal was wet. Snowmelt. You climbed the rope ladder after the blizzard stopped. 11:45. The constable logged the attic hatch opening at 11:47. Your shoe, mademoiselle, left a print in the attic dust, size 5. Girton engineering boots. Japp produced the boot, mud-caked, the sole patterned with a distinctive star. Matches the print. Clara lunged. Lies! Poirot continued, unmoved. The earrings. You stole one from your own jewellery box weeks ago, planted it with Evelyn's body. The mate you wore last night, until you lost it in the garden to frame yourself innocently. But the blood on the second earring, Blackwood's type O. You cut him, then pressed the earring into the wound. Lang surged to his feet. She played me, said Blackwood acted alone. Silence, Japp snapped. Poirot raised a hand. One more piece, the phonograph cylinder. He set it on the gramophone, cranked the handle. Clara's voice, tinny, rehearsed, filled the room. Aunt, no, please! A scream. Then Evelyn's voice, faint. The corridor remembers. The scream heard by the maids, Poirot said. Recorded yesterday. Played from the attic at 10:47 to mask the real timing. Evelyn was already dead. Clara's defiance cracked. She deserved it. She would have sent father to prison, me to the workhouse. Poirot's voice softened. You are your mother's daughter, mademoiselle. Ruthless. But ruthlessness is not justice. The method, a symphony of deception. The priest's hole, the chandelier, the roof, the icehouse, all orchestrated by the quiet niece who studied mechanics while others played bridge. Japp stepped forward. Clara Voss, I arrest you for the murders of Lady Evelyn Hargrove and Dr. Julian Blackwood, and the attempted murder of Colonel Thorne. As the constables lifted her, Clara's eyes met Poirot's. The corridor will claim another, she whispered. It always does. Poirot watched her go, then turned to the fire. He tossed the crimson petal into the flames. It curled, blackened, vanished. Non, mademoiselle, he murmured. The corridor is silent now. Outside, the snow had melted into rivulets, carving channels through the gravel. The manor stood cleansed, secrets washed away. But in the crimson corridor, the chandelier gave one final, almost imperceptible sway, as though bowing to the little Belgian who had outwitted death itself. Poirot adjusted his hat, stepped into the dusk. The case was closed. Or was it? As his taxi crunched down the drive, a single drop of blood, fresh, warm, appeared on the drawing-room rug where Clara had sat. It spread, then sank into the wool, leaving no trace. Poirot never saw it. But the corridor remembered. Chapter 8. False Confessions. The drawing-room fire had been raked and rekindled, yet the chill lingered. Dusk bled through the tall windows, turning the snow slush outside to bruised lilac. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre of the rug, where Clara's blood drop had vanished, his patent leather shoes planted like twin anchors. The suspects, the servants, the constables formed a silent amphitheatre. Clara Voss had been taken to the village cells. Victor Lang sat cuffed to a chair, eyes fixed on the carpet as though answers might seep up through the weave. Colonel Thorne stood by the mantel, brandy untouched. The gramophone needle rested in the run-out groove, hissing like a kettle. Inspector Japp cleared his throat. Poirot, you said the case was closed, yet you asked us to stay. Why? Poirot raised a finger. Because, mon ami, a confession is not a conclusion. It is merely a curtain falling on the wrong act. He turned to Lang. Herr Lang, you confessed to orchestrating the impossible murder. You named Blackwood the stabber, Clara the trigger woman, Elsie the pawn. Yet one detail troubles me. Lang's scar twitched. I told the truth. Non, you told a truth. Poirot produced the red leather diary, Clara's. Here, she writes, Dr. B will do the deed, Lang provides the diamonds. Yet the diamonds were found in the icehouse, wrapped in Blackwood's handkerchief. If Lang provided them, why were they in Blackwood's possession? Lang shrugged. Blackwood double-crossed me. Took them to run?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Curious, because the pouch also contained a train ticket, Berlin to Southampton, dated tomorrow. In your name, Herr Lang. Blackwood was staying to face the music. You were fleeing." Lang's composure cracked. "Clara forged it." Poirot shook his head. "The ink is yours. The stationer in Guildford confirmed the purchase. Yesterday, 3:17 p.m., while Clara was locked in her room, weeping." He turned to Thorne. "Colonel, you confessed in the library an hour ago. I did it for honour, you said. Evelyn ruined my career in 22, court-martial cover-up. You claimed to have entered via the priest's hole, stabbed her, planted the medal. Yet your limp, shrapnel in the hip, makes the spiral stair impossible. You demonstrated as much when we carried you from the cellar." Thorne's face purpled. I was desperate, wanted to protect Clara." "Protect?" Poirot echoed. "Or distract? You polished the medal this morning. After the blood was planted, you knew it was false evidence." Thorne sank into a chair, defeated. Poirot faced the room. 3 confessions, 3 lies. Let us examine the true mechanism. He moved to the side table, where the stiletto lay beside the spring-loaded dagger from the attic. 2 blades, 1 murder. The stiletto killed Evelyn and Blackwood. The spring dagger, Clara's design, was a decoy, never used. Why? He lifted the chandelier hook, now wrapped in cotton. This was tied with fishing line, yes, but the groove in the chain is shallow, cut by a left-handed pull. Clara is right-handed, Lang left-handed, Blackwood ambidextrous, yet the fingerprints on the hook are none of theirs. Japp frowned. Whose then? Poirot produced a small card. The butler, Mr. Hargreaves. His prints, taken when he served coffee, are on the hook, the attic trapdoor, and the ice-house brick. He is the invisible hand. The butler, standing by the door, went rigid. "Sir." Poirot's voice was gentle. "You have served this house 30 years. You loved Lady Evelyn, unrequited perhaps. When she discovered the smuggling, she confided in you, asked you to hide the codicil. You agreed, but then—" He opened the red diary to a pressed violet. "This flower, from the conservatory. You picked it the night of the murder, to leave in the chandelier as a signal. But the signal was for whom?" The butler's shoulders sagged. "For Elsie, my daughter." A gasp rippled through the room. Elsie the maid, standing with the others, began to cry. Poirot continued. "Elsie, blonde, terrified, coerced by Lang. But also your daughter, Monsieur Hargreaves, born 1916 before you married. Lady Evelyn knew, paid for her upbringing. When the smuggling began, Evelyn planned to expose it and name Elsie in the will as co-heir with Clara. You could not allow your daughter to be tainted by scandal." The butler's voice cracked. "She was innocent. Lang threatened to sell her to the white slavers in Buenos Aires if she didn't plant the clues. I helped her, tied the line, hid the diamonds, but I never killed." Poirot nodded. "You did not. The killer did." "The killer was inside the corridor the entire time, hidden in plain sight." He pointed to the wainscoting, the panel opposite the priest's hole. A second compartment, mirror image, large enough for a man. The butler opened it for the killer to enter at 10:30, closed it after the stab. The killer emerged after the doors were forced, blending with the crowd. Japp stared. "Who?" Poirot's gaze settled on Colonel Thorne. "You, mon colonel. Your limp is real, but you can manage 3 steps. You entered the panel at 10:30, when the maid passed with hot water bottles. You stabbed Evelyn, once, to the heart, as you learned in the trenches. You planted the medal. You emerged at 10:50, limping dramatically, claiming shock. Thorne's face was stone. Preposterous! Poirot produced a small glass vial. This, found in your dispatch box, contains Evelyn's blood, taken after the stab to plant later. The fresh drop in the drawing room. You pricked your finger, same blood type AB. You staged the icehouse attack on yourself to deflect suspicion. Thorne surged up. I loved her. She ruined me, yes, but I'd never. Poirot's voice cut like a scalpel. You loved her fortune. She promised to clear your debts if you killed Blackwood and Lang, framed Clara, but she lied. The codicil left you nothing. You killed her in rage, then played the grieving friend. Thorne lunged for the stiletto. Japp tackled him. The colonel fought like a tiger, but the constables pinned him. As they cuffed him, he roared, The corridor will have its due. Poirot watched unmoved. The corridor has had enough. Later, in the crimson corridor, the chandelier was removed for evidence. Beneath it, etched into the parquet, a faint inscription, carved years ago by a lovesick footman, EH plus JH 1905. Evelyn and the butler in their youth. Poirot traced it with a gloved finger. Love, betrayal, blood, the corridor remembers all. Outside, the snow had melted entirely. The manor stood bare, secrets laid bare like roots after a storm. Poirot boarded his taxi. As it pulled away, the drawing-room rug was rolled up for cleaning. Beneath it, the floorboards were pristine. No blood, no petal, no trace. The corridor, at last, was silent. Chapter 9. The crimson revelation night had fallen hard over Hargrove Manor. A velvet darkness pricked only by the gas lamps along the drive. The snow was gone. The gravel steamed faintly where it had melted into the earth. Inside the crimson corridor, the walls seemed to breathe, red velvet, inhaling the lamplight, exhaling shadows. The chandelier was down, packed in straw for Scotland Yard. In its place hung a single bare bulb, swinging on its cord like a hanged man. Hercule Poirot stood beneath it, alone. The house was empty of suspects. Clara Voss, Victor Lang, Colonel Thorne, and the butler Hargreaves, all in cells. Dr. Blackwood's body had been removed to the Guildford morgue. Yet the corridor felt crowded, as though every footstep ever taken here pressed against the air. Inspector Japp entered, coat unbuttoned, breath fogging. Forensics telegram just came through the village exchange. The blood under the rug AB negative, same as Evelyn's and Thorne's. No foreign types. The stiletto, only Thorne's prints. Case tied with a bow. Poirot. Why the long face? Poirot's eyes, green and luminous, fixed on the bare bulb. Because, mon ami, a bow can be untied, and the ribbon is crimson. He led Japp to the wainscoting. The mirror image panel, the one that had hidden Thorne, stood open. Inside, the compartment was lined with faded silk, the colour of dried blood. Poirot reached in, fingers tracing the back wall. A soft click. A second panel slid aside, revealing a narrow recess no wider than a folio. Within lay a small tin box, rusted, padlocked. The true priest's hole, Poirot murmured. The first was a decoy. This one opens only from within. Japp whistled. How did you know? Poirot produced the brass key from Evelyn's dead hand. This key has a notch filed on the left, mirror image of the notched key in the boudoir. One for the false compartment, one for the true. The key turned. The padlock fell away. Inside the tin, a bundle of letters tied with crimson ribbon, a photograph, and a single diamond, cut, flawless, the size of a man's thumbnail. Poirot unfolded the top letter. Yellowed paper, ink faded to sepia. My dearest Evelyn, if you read this, I'm gone. The child is safe, hidden with your sister in Devon. Forgive me. The war took everything but my shame. I will love you always. RT 1915 Jap stared. RT? Reginald Thorne? The Colonel? Poirot nodded. Not the retired officer we met. His father, the real Colonel Reginald Thorne, died at Passchendaele. Our Thorne, Sergeant Major Reginald Thorne, stole his identity, his medals, his life. Evelyn discovered it last month. Threatened exposure unless he killed Blackwood and Lang, her rivals in the diamond scam. He held up the photograph. A young Evelyn, radiant, arm-linked with a uniformed officer, Thorne's father. On the back in Evelyn's hand, the corridor remembers what the heart forgets. Jap's jaw worked. So Thorne, our Thorne, killed her to save his lie. No, Poirot said softly. He killed her to save his son. He opened the next letter, dated 3 days ago. Evelyn, the boy is ill, consumption. The sanatorium demands $500. You promised the diamonds. If you renege, I tell Clara the truth. She is not Blackwood's, but mine. Your niece, your daughter, my granddaughter. J.H., the butler, Poirot said. Hargreaves, his initials. Clara is his child with Evelyn. Blackwood's abortion story, a blind. The clinic in Zurich was for another woman. Hargreaves and Evelyn resumed their affair in secret. Clara, born 1916, raised as niece. Jap rubbed his temples. So everyone lied about paternity. Everyone, Poirot confirmed. And the diamond in the box. Payment for the sanatorium. Evelyn hid it here, planning to deliver it after exposing the smugglers. Thorne, our Thorne, discovered the letters. He entered the true compartment at 10:30, waited. When Evelyn came to retrieve the diamond, he stabbed her, not in rage, but in terror. His son's life depended on silence. He laid the diamond on the carpet. It caught the bulb's light, scattering crimson flecks across the walls like fresh blood. The mechanism? Jap asked. Simple. Thorne entered the false compartment first, planted the medal, the earring, then slipped into the true one when the maid passed. Stabbed Evelyn at 10:47. The recorded scream played. He emerged at 10:50, limping, joining the crowd. Later, he cut Blackwood's throat in the ice house to silence the only witness who knew his true identity. The diamonds were to fund his escape with the boy. Poirot knelt, pressed the diamond into the parquet where Evelyn had fallen. It fit perfectly into a tiny recess, a secret compartment within the floor itself. The corridor's final secret, he said. Evelyn carved it years ago to hide love letters Thorne knew. He returned tonight, after his arrest, to retrieve the diamond. The fresh blood on the rug, his own. He pricked his finger to test if we were watching. Jap stared. He escaped the village cells. No. The constable was bribed. With a promise of the diamond, Thorne came back through the icehouse tunnel, entered the true compartment, took the stone, but I replaced it with paste. Poirot held up the real diamond. He has a forgery and a noose. Footsteps echoed. The butler, Hargreaves, stood in the doorway, face ashen, a Webley in his hand. "You'll not hang my grandson," he said quietly. Poirot did not flinch. "Put down the gun, monsieur. The boy will live. The trust, Evelyn's true will, leaves everything to Clara and the sanatorium. I found the codicil in the diamond's recess. Signed, witnessed, legal." Hargreaves's hand trembled. She provided for him? "Always," Poirot said. "She was ruthless, but not cruel. The corridor remembers love, too." The butler lowered the gun. Jap cuffed him gently. As they led him away, Hargreaves whispered, "Tell Clara. Her mother loved her." Poirot nodded. "She will know." Later in the drawing room, Poirot poured tisane for Clara, released, heir to millions. She wept silently. "The corridor took everything," she said. "No, mademoiselle," Poirot replied. "It gave you the truth." he placed the diamond in her palm. "For the boy, your half-brother." Outside, dawn crept over the manor, pale gold, cleansing. The crimson corridor was stripped of its velvet, repainted ivory. The secrets were gone, washed away with the snow. Poirot boarded his taxi. As it, pulled away, the new wallpaper was delivered, soft blue like a summer sky. The corridor, at last, forgot. Chapter 10. Justice in the Fog. The fog returned at dawn, rolling in from the Thames like a slow white tide. It swallowed the gravel drive, the skeletal rosebeds, the manor itself, until Hargrove seemed a ship adrift in cotton. Hercule Poirot stood on the front steps, valise in hand, overcoat buttoned to the throat. The air smelled of wet earth and endings. Behind him, the crimson corridor, now stripped to bare plaster, waited for its new skin of pale blue paper. Inspector Japp emerged from the mist, boots crunching. Guildford sending a van for the prisoners, Thorne's raving about ghosts, Hargreaves won't speak, Clara's with the solicitor, signing papers for the trust. The boy in Devon gets his sanatorium. Clean wrap, Poirot. Poirot adjusted his hat. Clean, mon ami? Justice is never clean. It is merely complete. A black Daimler purred up the drive, scattering fog. The driver, a young constable, leapt out, saluted. "Message from London, sir. Urgent." He handed Poirot a telegram. Poirot slit the envelope with a gloved finger. "Poirot, stop diamond recovered from Thorne. Stop confession, full stop. But one detail troubles. Stop come at once. Stop Hastings." Poirot's moustache bristled. Hastings, always the nose for the unturned stone. Japp frowned. "What detail?" Poirot folded the telegram. "We shall see." They re-entered the manor. The drawing room was bare. Furniture shrouded, the rug rolled away. Only the fireplace remained, a single log smouldering. Clara Voss stood before it, diamond in her palm, eyes red but steady. "I'm selling the house," she said. "The corridor goes, everything goes." Poirot inclined his head. "Wise, mademoiselle. Some walls remember too much." The butler, Hargreaves, shuffled in, wrists cuffed, escorted by 2 officers. His face was grey, but his gaze sought Clara. "Child," he said softly, "your mother, she kept the letters, in the floor. She wanted you to know you were loved." Clara's chin lifted. "I know now." Hargreaves was led away. As the door closed, a faint sound drifted from the corridor, scratching like a mouse behind plaster. Japp shivered. "Rats!" "Non," Poirot said. "Memory." They followed the sound. The corridor was a skeleton, lath exposed, velvet gone. Workmen had begun papering one end. Rolls of sky blue lay like sleeping swans. The scratching came from the far wall, near the former chandelier hook. Poirot knelt. A loose floorboard. He pried it up beneath a small cavity. Inside, a child's toy, a tin soldier, paint-chipped, one arm missing, and a folded note, yellowed in a child's scrawl. "To the corridor. Keep my secret. CV 1920. Clara gasped. "I was 4. I hid it when Aunt, Mother, scolded me for playing in the passage." Poirot tucked the soldier into his pocket. The corridor kept its promise. The Daimler's horn sounded. Time to go. At Guildford Station, Hastings waited on the platform, cap askew, eyes bright. "Poirot!" The diamond. Thorne had it sewn into his coat lining. But the cut, Star of Kimberley, reported stolen in 29. Evelyn's husband insured it for 50,000. Yet it was never recovered, until now. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Because it was never stolen. Sir Reginald faked the theft to cover gambling debts. Evelyn discovered it years later. Kept it hidden in the corridor floor. The smuggling was a blind. Blackwood and Lang were moving paste fakes. The real diamonds were always here. Hastings gaped. Then the motive was love, Poirot said. Evelyn planned to sell the Star, fund the trust, expose the fraud. Our Thorn, knew the diamond's location from his father's letters. He killed to protect his son's future. Hargreaves helped to protect Clara. Clara orchestrated the mechanism to frame others. Lang confessed to save his skin. Blackwood died believing he was the villain. On the London train, Poirot gazed out at the fog. The corridor was never crimson from blood. It was love, hidden, betrayed, remembered. At Scotland Yard, the prisoners were processed. Thorne hanged himself in his cell with a bedsheet, left a note. The corridor claimed its due. Hargreaves died of heart failure en route to Dartmoor. Clara sold the manor to a girls' school. The corridor became a library. The Star of Kimberley funded sanatoria across England. Years later, Poirot returned. The manor, now St. Evelyn's Academy, bustled with girls in navy uniforms. The corridor was sky blue, lined with books. A plaque read, "In memory of Evelyn Hargrove, who gave everything." Poirot laid a single white rose beneath it. The tin soldier, restored, arm reattached, stood in a glass case nearby. A girl approached, Clara's daughter, eyes sharp as her grandmother's. "Monsieur Poirot, Mother said you'd come. She left this." A letter, sealed with crimson wax. "The corridor is blue now, but it remembers. Thank you for giving us a future." C.V. Poirot smiled, tucked the letter away. As he left, fog rolled in again, gentle, cleansing. The manor stood clear, secrets dissolved like snow in spring. Justice, at last, was clean.